There it is. Now it's saying live before lock. What's going on, everybody? Monday, Veterans Day. 9-game slate today, I think.
Veterans Day was yesterday, my good man.
Veterans Day observed.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. My bad. Proceed.
Today's the holiday for it all.
Is it? I don't know. I work with random European concerns in doing this. So did people get off work or some shit?
Yes, today is a day off of work for most.
Not me.
Not us. Not us.
All right.
We are here to serve.
I had 2 jobs. I'm about 13 hours in right now. So no rest for the wicked.
We've got a ton of games to talk about. I've got the timer loaded up here. 4 minutes per game should get us in where we need to be quickly as possible.
We can beat that on a couple of these too.
We certainly can. So let's just start it off right away. Washington and Orlando. 4 minutes on the clock. And go. I'm just going to give my high-level take of who I have right now, and it's all yours. Marquise Morris is the guy getting the most exposure from me in this game right now. Again, you're on
FanDuel. Okay. For a second, I was like, what? And then I'm like, wait, you're on FanDuel. That makes a lot of sense. Proceed. So I was about to, have open mouth gape face. Like, what?
I don't have much Wall. I don't really have any Dwight Howard right now. The main source of exposure is Markieff Morris and then Terrence Ross on the opposite side. I don't have much else to say, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, for a FanDuel take, I think that's actually fairly adequate at this point. I still think I would have some John Wall if I were you, because with the amount of time they're giving him, and there's still 65 or a chance out of him here, and I can't think of anything on FanDuel that jumps up and down and screams play me on FanDuel. So if there was in theory $6,900 Derrick Rose is going to be kind of chalk, but that team and that lineup are obviously all jacked to hell at the moment. So I think if I was building 100 lineups on FanDuel, I would have some John Wall. I would have some reasonable amount, because getting 60 out of him here wouldn't shock me, and that could be the highest scoring point guard by some measure.
I have 4% John Wall right now.
Okay, that's okay. So we're on. Yeah, point guard there is actually a little bit sticky on FanDuel, believe it or not. It's the only position that doesn't have multiple really good options to me. The DraftKings prices on these guys are just way too cheap. Basically, everybody on the Wizards, or the starting team for the Wizards, I should say, is just significantly too cheap on the Wizards there. 7,100 for Beal is way too cheap. 8,600 for Wall is just way too cheap. Porter's about right with how fluctuating he is. Maybe he's okay, but Morris is 46 on FanDuel, as you mentioned, which makes him great, whereas even a potential drop wouldn't necessarily kill you. And 44, I certainly have no issue in. That would just be tournaments. FanDuel Howard is 74. I think I'm looking at the Andre and a couple other guys around that range before I roll that out there, but I don't think it's terrible. And 6,100 on DK is also exceptional. So looking for some advanced take to give here, and there really isn't one. They're just running Wall and Beal until their legs fall off at this point. The rest of the guys are a little bit more fractious. We can't quite count on their production. We can't quite count on their minutes. But I do think their plan A is to just run the starters until they die, or until they lose so many games that Brooks gets fired, or till something changes. But right now, for the last few games, plan A has been just run those guys into the ground. And, I think you very reasonably project, John Wall for around 50 tonight, or a hair less than that. And you project Brad Beal for around 40 tonight, or a hair less than that. And they're just way too cheap for those being reasonable medium projections. And again, these two teams played, I want to say 2 games ago, not last game, but the game before. And you got whatever it was, 52 out of Wall and 48 out of Beal. That's what you get out of those guys playing. I think in that game, they both played around 42 minutes. That's a slightly over average game from Beal, but the shooting in that game wasn't crazy. One sec, I have it here somewhere. I will pull it up, but it wasn't like there was some crazy non-repeatable. Yeah, so Wall had in his 42 minutes 52 DK points. He had 19 points, 12 assists, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, a block, 3 turnovers, shot 9 for 21 from the field, missed all 3 of his 3-pointers. That's 43% from the field. That's right about what you'd expect. 52 that's almost exactly if you asked me to predict his line, it would be 2 less rebounds, maybe 1 more assist and 2 more points, and so, but it would look almost exactly like this, and that's 52 fantasy points. He costs 8,600. If that's the median projection we're throwing out there, what's the upside is 65, the downside is 40 unless something goes crazy. So Beal had a bit more of a ceiling game, shot 10 of 21 and 4 of 9 from 3. Also had 2 steals and a block, a little less likely for him than Wall. So sure, maybe I think he'd come in under that by a few points, but those guys are just way the hell too cheap. They're so way the hell too cheap that I don't have almost any issue playing them next to each other. Normally I have a big, I really only want to play one of those guys. If you don't have anybody on the Magic and you play Wall and Beal, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. There's so many ways they're both fine. If Beal gets 35, then it is a little more likely Wall gets 62, but play one, play both, play all.
They're just too cheap on DraftKings.
They're just way to hell too cheap. They're just underpriced by more than $1,000 each, probably. Now it is worth saying everybody's too cheap over there. Yeah. So it's not as dumb as because if you look at FanDuel, there are a few guys on FanDuel that are just a fair amount too cheap. TJ Warren is still cheaper than he deserves to be priced on both sites. Harrison Barnes is cheaper on both sides than he deserves to be on both sites. Devin Booker's too cheap on FanDuel. Dennis Schroeder is too cheap on FanDuel. But there's 7 guys who are too cheap on FanDuel. There's 67 guys who are too cheap on DraftKings today. So for that reason, they aren't quite must plays. If the rest of the slate was priced kind of appropriately, or at least what the old normal, then I would get being you have to win all these guys. But because there are so many other cheaper guys, if you don't have one of those wizards in your lineup, I'm not looking at that as a critical error. But certainly there's no amount of Wall and Beal on DK that bothers me.
I agree.
Okay, so I won't move any further than that. Except to say the other guys are all absolutely fine in limited amounts of exposure. Again, much more preferable on DK. On FanDuel, Markieff is really the most inappropriately priced, but again, he's barely that solid. But you like that he's a power forward where there's not that many exceptional plays, and you like that it is droppable, which isn't what you want to do with a $4,600 guy, but not something that absolutely kills you. Elf is out. Yeah, that's what I expected. He's going to come back Wednesday. But it's worth pointing out the last time versus Orlando, that was the time the second unit got hot and they benched, the starting 3, 4, 5 of Porter, Markieff, Howard for the second half of that game, kind of. So they all got shit minutes. I don't think that's likely, but if it's normally a 10% likelihood, I'd say it's 15 because of how well they played in this matchup just 3 or 4 days ago. I think the coach remembers that. So I still, on a slate this juicy, don't want to play any of those backups, but full disclosure, I don't think it's a day you need to DJ Augustine in your life. I'll just leave it at that. Evan Fournier is a bit more of a cash play for me than a tournament play. Well, Aaron Gordon is going to play. Aaron Gordon himself makes a pretty sexy tournament play now.
He's really the only guy I have any interest in from Orlando.
I think both Aaron Gordon and Vooch also, especially on FanDuel, same price DraftKings and FanDuel. Vooch, obviously, without Gordon, I would have been supremely interested in, or at least more interested in. Now, I still don't have a problem with a tournament. So, FanDuel, Gordon especially, FanDuel especially, Vooch, FanDuel especially, Terrence Ross still in play for me. It's just still carrying a lot of usage. He's 47, 46, whatever he is on FanDuel. T. Ross you could do, but let's move on to another game.
Sure. Reset the clock for the Miami Heat and the Philadelphia 76ers.
How long was that?
Double the amount of time it was supposed to be.
Really?
Yeah.
God damn it. Give me we need a buzzer or some shit. Go ahead.
Oh, the buzzer went off. Even chat heard it.
God damn. All right, go ahead. I was just all up in my own head.
We're good. We have games that we'll be cutting out of here. Heat and Sixers. This one's a big one for me in that I have a ton of Philadelphia, namely in Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and JJ Redick. I'm having a hard time not going to these guys. I also have quite a bit of Miami in Justice Winslow and what was formerly chalky Goran Dragic, now just with the field Goran Dragic. So, thoughts on Embiid and Simmons first and foremost, because those are my guys today.
Interesting. Why are you so on these teams? I'd like to hear more about what you think, and so would the chat apparently. So talk to me more about why specifically you're up on these guys. Is it just a raw projection, or is there some more method to the madness here?
For Embiid, I think it's just a raw projection. He grades out better than any other center on the slate for me. Even if I try to limit him slightly, if I see anything getting out of whack, if I knock it back down, it's just there. And I'm having a lot of trouble not going there. And I tend to enjoy the Embiid narratives when he does not like the particular person he's playing against. Whiteside being one of those people. So for me, I'm there. And then for Ben Simmons, the reason I actually like Ben Simmons more than I normally do is because he's popping up for me. I'm usually more pessimistic on Simmons, but now that he is just sitting in like a point guard spot, I'm getting a lot of him, and it's not taking a lot for me to be over the field. He's not particularly owned today. One of, a group of like 9 guys that have double-digit exposure. So he just grades out so well on a point per possession basis, and the minutes are going to be there for him to be able to soak up as much as he needs. So I'm hoping he can be highly efficient in the time that he's on the floor.
Well, let me start with this. Are you with me in that you have basically no interest in the peripheral pieces a la Landry Shamet and Furkan Korkmaz and Amir Johnson? Are those guys all dead to you? Or
yeah, I don't really have any of those guys outside of maybe like just randomness popping up in a lineup or two.
Right, because I think when you put Muscala and Chandler back in here, both of whom missed last game, those guys all missed enough minutes that now you're really asking. Like, I actually owe an apology that I never gave on Furkan Korkmaz. During the last game, people said, hey, you have no interest in it. I said, I'm not sure he's going to get the time. I think he gets like 18 minutes. Is there a chance he gets 28 minutes and 24 fantasy points and is good for his 3K? That's possible, but I'll risk that. He got 23 minutes and 24 fantasy points. So decent game out of Furkan. Again, did not destroy you not to have him. There were guys around his price who were a little bit better, but he was pretty good. But yeah, I think he and like if I was going to play any of them, it would be Shamet. Shamet at least consistently seems to have a role. I'm pretty sure he's going to play, but I think Chandler and Muscala coming back pull all sorts of minutes from all sorts of these guys. So I don't have any interest in, like, someone was just asking about Landry Shamet. Landry Shamet is on the very edge of tournament playable for me, and I'd want him to be my cheap piece of a game stack or something.
Yeah, I have 5% of him. $100 more than the minimum. It's not that big of a deal on FanDuel.
Right. Yeah, no, FanDuel makes plenty of sense. So I like Embiid a good bit more than Simmons. Again, we have a lot of tape, and I've watched a number of times the series between the Heat and the 76ers. And there's pretty similar personnel still going on here. Now, the center position will be a little more interesting because by the time we got to that point in the postseason, Whiteside was very, very, very badly in the doghouse. So we were getting 15 minutes of Whiteside was all they were doing regardless. And he even, I think, was fully benched some of those games. So did not even play some of those postseason games, and some of the late season had very limited minutes. So it will be interesting in what is, I think, at least fair to say, is that the ringer?
It is.
A challenging spot. See, now I can hear it. Challenging. So I'll give you the 30-second version. Redick, I think fine in tournaments. I think you can do better in cash. I don't think you need to go Fultz today. If I saw him in a tournament lineup, I wouldn't kill you. Embiid has been under-owned all year and is sort of matchup proof. And at that price, and the fact that I think people do play a lot more of other guys, I really like him on FanDuel. I certainly don't have any issue playing him on DK. Simmons has not been terribly good against the Heat. He's been very consistent. He's going to get you 40, 45. But today's a day I think you need absolutely preposterous margins on DK, and on FanDuel he's 9.9. At that point, I think I play John Wall. That's just me. But every single game against the Heat, he like flirted with a low-end triple-double over and over again. And they just let him shoot and did a good job of guarding him. And Embiid was more the guy. Maybe it's different, Sans Bellinelli and some of the other pieces floating around in that series, but I'll leave it at that. I slightly like Embiid more than Simmons. And if I was going to punt one of the power forwards, it would be Muscala, not Chandler. And I'm done.
I'm assuming you don't have much interest in anybody on Miami. They're kind of priced better on FanDuel than DK.
Well, you made it sound like you did.
Just Winslow is a guy that's popping up a lot for me.
Interesting. Again, FanDuel, he's priced, I think, dollar per dollar the same. Yes. So I get that in theory that denotes a mark. He was good in that series. So certainly I have no tape reason to disagree with you. So I like him in tournaments. I don't think he can be a cash play in the world of Harrison Barnes and the world of TJ Warren.
Yeah.
But as a tournament pivot off those guys, that sounds great to me. I have no issue with that. And Dragic. Dragic is 5,900, 5,800. You know what I'm saying? He's 5,958 on the two sites. He's almost certainly going to get you. Is he firmly playing, by the way?
As far as I know.
I've been back and forth on this. Okay, I'm 99% sure he is definitely playing. At that point, he will get you 25, almost certainly. So he's a really strong cash play at that price. I'd much rather play him than Derrick Rose at cash, for example. But
for sure,
and I don't hate him in a tournament. Oh, and I actually really like Kelly Olynyk on FanDuel.
I have way more than the field of Kelly Olynyk right now. I don't consider it to be that interesting because he's 3,800. It's more of just a functional punt for me than like I like him.
Oh, I legit like him at that price because I can see a huge, you're just looking at, you get some foul trouble on Whiteside, and he was halfway decent in the postseason game, so they don't mind him in this spot. And he pulls Embiid out of the paint, which is something they like to do to help everyone's rebounding. Oh, like I'll say I legit like $3,800. I can possibly drop at Kelly Olynyk on FanDuel because I can really see a way he gets 35 fantasy points, and there's not a lot of cheap punt guys who I can really see a giant ceiling coming out pretty easily. So. Not a cash play, but love them in tournaments. Ready to move on.
Let's do it. Raptors and Pelicans. This one's a big one for me. Yep. I'm going to have 50% Kawhi Leonard today. Yep. And I'm going to have a little bit of Danny Green. I'll have some Anthony Davis because it's never just a full fade AD game for me, or he might just put up 100. Who knows? But everything I'm doing in this game revolves around Kawhi Leonard.
Don't hate whatsoever. He's just too cheap. He's 94 FanDuel?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the presence of, George for 900 more and whatever the hell the price is on Durant, he's 11.2 or 11.3 there, lowers the ownership for those reasons. So I'm a pretty big fan of Kawhi. Both sides, again, I guess I have to be the designated DK talker here. Yeah. But big fan of him, both sides. I think clearly the strongest play in this game, the one that certainly gets me the most excited, I think, on either team here. So we still don't have Mirotic news so far as I'm aware.
Still a game time decision to my knowledge.
Yeah, it's not terribly looking through news. Still a game time decision there.
Yep.
Yeah, again, if we find out he's in or you can swap into him, I'm a giant fan of getting guys with 50-point upsides at 1% owned.
Yeah.
A little less on today's slate because there are so many juicy guys on DraftKings where you could, in theory, swap into him who have that upside. And again, it's only like $1,000 more for Kawhi. That's really hard to get away from. Like, it is actually an exceptional matchup for Kawhi as well. The pace is there. I'm a giant fan of Kawhi. Past that,
not a ton to like here.
Yeah, I don't hate Danny Green. Like, I had some people someone said to me, like, he's 4,300 on DK. I like him playing next to Kawhi more than not. And I know you've said the same thing. Yeah. Someone was like, shooting guards have the worst matchup against the Pelicans. No, they don't, which is why, like, DVP and DRPM should be burnt in a fire while chastised. Like, they're, Drew Holiday's going to guard Kyle Lowry mostly. Occasional points in time, he's going to guard Kawhi Leonard. Picking up Danny Green is going to be a distant third on his list of things to handle on the defensive end. So
yeah,
that he's running into, whomever, Etuan Moore, et cetera, on the other side. It's not a bad matchup whatsoever, and he's cheap enough on DK. That makes some sense to me. So as a low-owned guy who does carry an upside with him in a fast-paced game, I like that. Ibaka is starting, which I expected. It's still been really good. You want to play Ibaka and something, knock yourself out. Because of that, a little less interested in Jonas. Let's move on. So Drew Holiday, 8,200 and 8,600 still is really safe. There's still no Elf. Is an exceptional cash play. It's going to be really hard for him to screw you. It's interesting comparing him to Zach LaVine at similar numbers and a couple of other guys, but certainly a guy I'd want some exposure to. But is starting to price out the cap a little bit, and obviously the Raptors tons of excellent wing defenders. And Randall's still getting less chatter than I think he would get after the exceptional game he's coming off of, where he demolished his minutes limit, by the way.
Yeah, 6,600 for him on DraftKings feels really nice.
Right, there's at least an upside there. So I think he deserves a mention for that reason. But going into the last game, he hadn't exceeded 28 minutes all year, and I said, I'm going to go out on a limb and think he breaks that tonight, and he played 36 minutes. Like, he was not messing around. Also worth pointing out, by the way, they not on a back-to-back. The only teams on a back-to-back are the Magic on the back end and the Warriors on the front end. That's it. Everyone else is on an island game, and that includes this team. So for that reason, I'd have still some interest in Julius Randle. If they're on a back-to-back, I'd be like, okay, I really don't think they're going to do that again. But it's an island game for them, so certainly some Randle interest for me. But yeah, it's just the Magic and the Magic played yesterday. The Warriors play tomorrow. That's it. Let's move.
Perfect. 12 seconds to spare. Clear and start We are going to Chicago. Chicago hosting the Dallas Mavericks. I've got a ton of this game, particularly on the Dallas side. DeAndre Jordan, one of my favorite center plays of the day. I'm over the field on him. Love Dennis Smith. I think he's still too cheap. Harrison Barnes is clear chalk today, and as he should be, he's too cheap on both sites. And then I am still advocating for JJ Barea. I'm a little nervous now. Adam's not thinking he's going to get as many minutes as I was originally anticipating. I thought he could see a little bit of an extra boost with Wes Matthews out.
They keep him. So, I'm sorry. I think I interrupted you.
You're fine. You're fine. That was the end of the sentence.
Okay. They do intentionally keep him down. Like, it is something they watch. Now, what you're hoping for is you get some more of those, not just backing him up, but some minutes next to Dennis Smith Jr., which they ran a bit more at the beginning of the year. They ran some interesting multi-guard lineups earlier this year when they didn't have Harrison Barnes. Now you don't have Wesley Matthews. So it's going to be interesting to see how those minutes flow. But I think you are much safer in the Barea minutes in that you were previously dealing with like 16 as a real possibility. Like, that happens frequently. Like, Dennis Smith is playing well and he's just straight backing up. That happens. Now I think they play next to each other some, and I think your floor is safely like 20, but I think your ceiling is like 24. I'm going to be really surprised if you see 26 minutes of JJ Barea. That would just be against everything he's done the entire year in other spots where it's like, well, I guess Jalen Brunson, because we can't give JJ Barea 27 minutes. Like, it just really seems to be just a hard no from Carlisle at this point. So I still like him fine. Like, I'm on FanDuel again, where you can possibly drop it.
Right.
But, he's been exceptional point per minute. And the matchup is obviously
as good as it gets.
Yeah. JJ Barea or Kyle Anderson for cash would be me, JJ Barea, by quite a bit. And I mean, you're talking DK where they're exactly the same price. I think they're both 4K on the nose. I'd play JJ Barea in cash or tournaments. That game is fugly, and it's the third time we've seen that game this year, by the way. They do play like every day.
It's ridiculous.
The Jazz net. But anyhow, the rest of this team trying to get in under the clock.
Yeah. 2 minutes.
Barnes,
we got tons of time right now.
Okay, Barnes is fine, but fine to pivot away from. There is TJ Warren. There is obviously these super good up-priced guys of George and Kawhi and Durant. There is Joe Ingles. There is all kinds of guys who are priced fairly well on different sites. So don't be a slave to, having Harrison Barnes and everything, but he's really safe too. Like, he's probably going to get you 25 to 35. That feels pretty good for 5,000 to 5,500. And if there is a matchup in which you can project him to randomly bust out a ceiling game, it's going to be Chicago, where you get, oh my God, Levine defense and Parker defense, and like, it tastes really good.
Yeah.
And Wesley Matthews is out, so yeah. Oh, and don't Dorian Finney-Smith. Sorry, it's just me. I know the initials are DFS, but that's the best part of him. I'm not doing it. There's too many ways he gets 9 fantasy points. Like, you could randomly get that. Obviously, the matchup is tremendous and probably starts, and could get that random 30-point game he puts up once a year. But I'm so much more interested in tournaments and playing JJ Barea than Dorian Finney-Smith. I agree with your love on Jordan. Both sites a little underpriced. Again, these two teams played this year. The Chicago team was different. In that game, Dunn and Portis were starting. So this is, version, 3 of the 7 Bulls starting lineups we've had through all the injuries. But Levine still, with each of those guys starting, had 47 DK points. So I still like Levine as a very solid cash-like play.
Yeah.
And replacing those guys with, Arcidiacono, just increases your usage even more. So I'm still a fan. Levine anywhere you want to play. You did get 40 out of DeAndre in that game. So yeah, past that, Doncic in tournaments, fine, but it's just a day where so many guys are priced so well, where they're talking about Schroeder or, yeah, I hear the alarm, Schroeder or Devin Booker or other guys. So just a tournament pivot for me. Point per dollar, I can't project him as highly, but again, against the Bulls, I do think he carries a really large ceiling there. Dennis Smith fine in tournaments. I don't think I'm in a Kleber Powell kind of mood. Arcidiacono is a cash-only punt for me. It's just not a fantasy productive guy. I like him on at 3,300 last time and played really well and gave you like 22. If he gave you 30, I'd be pretty goddamn surprised. Justin Holiday still in play on DK for 5K, and I'm done.
Yeah, the whole Chicago team is just kind of better priced on DraftKings. So if you're looking to them, look there a little bit more. Yep. We're not going to need 4 minutes. I'm not even setting the clock for this one. The Memphis Grizzlies hosting the Utah Jazz. But I don't have anyone on the Jazz.
I wanted to find someone. I wasted so much time on this game today. Like, I literally went back and watched 40 minutes of tape from the first 2 times they played, and that's 40 minutes of my life I can never get back.
I have no one from Utah.
Yeah.
Only thing I have on Memphis, Jaren Jackson, 6,100 on FanDuel. Shelvin Mack as a punt option. That's it.
Yeah, so this was the one time this year my fade the chalk call blew up in my face, and it was when I said I didn't like Ricky Rubio. They've not been good against them. So they played twice. The first game, it's easier to just look at the Grizzlies. Gasol and Conley had 45 fantasy points. No one else was good. Second game, Gasol had 50 and Conley had 45. No one else was good. Stop me if you're seeing a trend here, but especially Conley at his price, I can see some fair amount of interest in either of these guys. And it's not just this year. Gasol's been very good against Gobert for a while, and Gobert has been very bad against Gasol for a while. Like, that is actually a strong matchup, and I like plenty in tournaments. In the same vein as DeAndre Jordan, I think I like DeAndre a little more against Chicago. I can't, get away from just wanting to play Chicago and not wanting to play Rudy Gobert, but I'm not upset with any tournament lineup that I see Marc Gasol in. Outside that, I guess on DraftKings, if you want to play 4K Kyle Anderson, go ahead.
Yeah, that's feasible. Feasible to me.
Yeah, at 4K, I get it. Jaren Jackson Jr., I'm sure in both of those games was in foul trouble, and it's a tough spot. Like, there's a massive upside. Maybe just figured it out last week. Had 2 consecutive games where he was not a dipshit after 6 in a row of getting in foul trouble. Maybe it's just like, oh, fuck, they blow the whistle when I hit the guy. I had no idea. Like, maybe that was a revelation or something. I have no idea. But
it might have been.
Yeah, Conley, tournaments. Gasol, tournaments. Kyle Anderson, tournaments. Although, again, I'm playing JJ Barea. I have a feeling several other 4K guys before that. Ingles at 6K, I can see in tournaments. I had basically 25 each of the first 2 times he played. He was fine, but just not. Feel free to have none. And again, Rubio, that game Donovan Mitchell wasn't there, so he had double points and assists. If you wanted to throw Rubio in a lineup, I suppose. But I'm done.
Get out of this slop.
Ugh.
Minnesota and Brooklyn.
We got some Jared Allen news, brother.
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, give me Jared Allen. Okay.
Yeah. Towns is a no-brainer, I think, and particularly on DraftKings where he's 8,900. He's very chalky, but with good reason. I'm playing a decent amount of Towns on FanDuel. I'm playing a decent amount of Taj Gibson on FanDuel. I just think he's too cheap for 5,300 before all these guys get worked into the rotation. And then I'm getting a little bit of D'Angelo Russell on FanDuel. I'm muting that a bit. I don't really like taking anything from Brooklyn unless you're just letting one spray. It's too hard to trust their rotations. But I think this game is all about Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah. So let me chill for a second. I don't chill enough, I'm told. Someone just asked, any love for Garrett Temple with Dylan Brooks out? No, I don't think he gets any extra time. That time flows into Wayne Selden or Marshawn Brooks, or like if he picks up an extra minute, I wouldn't be shocked. But at his price, he's fine in cash. There's not a lot of tournament upside. If you subscribe to our premium services, you'll see in my rankings that I have Kyle Anderson as a C in cash, but a B in tournaments, and I have Garrett Temple as a B in cash, but a C in tournaments. So that's basically, if I'm building a cash value lineup and I want one of those guys who I think gets me 20 at 4K, yes, I would rather run out Garrett Temple between those 2 guys. In tournaments, I would run out Kyle Anderson because of steals, blocks, ownership, ordination, various other things make him slightly more compelling in that format. But that's there to answer your question. I think Jeff Teague plays, and all of a sudden I'm pretty interested. I'm going to be paying close attention, and I think having a Teague provision in your lineup as you build it is a very good use of your time.
Yeah, Teague for 4,500 on DraftKings, like it's worth that shot.
Yeah, I think you're going to want to keep an eye open for $4,500 Jeff Teague, because I think does play. I think Teague and Wiggins play, and this gets into a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
So for that reason, you really only wanted to play Derrick Rose on FanDuel, and I still think where, again, point guard is a little sticky, and he's priced much better. 69 on FanDuel, which is nice. I think you can agree. 7,500 on DK, less nice. I'm happy to move away at this point. There's obviously all the upside in the world, point guard, Brooklyn, blah, blah, blah. But at that point, there's any number of ways that shit goes sideways. So I'm obviously then thusly dubious on Josh Okogie, though he's 3,900 on DK. And again, I like the matchup with Brooklyn, even if the pace isn't exceptional. So in the event we find out that, say, Wiggins is out, going back to Okogie at 3,900 in tournaments makes some sense. I don't think I can do it on FanDuel because it's going to lock before we know anything. Yeah, Towns should be a monster. I have no Your argument for Towns not working out is Wiggins and Teague return and the usage comes down a little bit. And especially on DraftKings, there are a pile of other expensive guys who are too cheap and centers who are too cheap. And those guys come back, and Towns is going to be 35% owned. I'll throw a guess out there off the top of my head, and only gets 48. Whereas one of these 6,800, 7K, Steven Adams, DeAndre Jordan, whatever the hell guys, gets 10 more fantasy points. Like that's your argument. You're fading the chalk if you move off Towns. So I can certainly see doing it if you get news that Teague and Wiggins return and start. And we project the ownership as I was just guessing that off the top of my head. But if we have the ownership for him on DK at like 40%, at that point, I'm fine with you moving. Certainly don't have to, but but if those guys are out and just as far as cash, yeah, just go ahead and windmill that guy in there. He looks way too good.
I'll be avoiding Rose. There's too many question marks here. I feel like trying to tackle him tonight is just way too risky for risk's sake.
Very happy with my record on Derrick Rose this year.
Yeah,
I was like all over him 2 days, and he, became the destroyer of worlds. And various other days, he got laid scratched, and that had issues. So I'm very happy taking what I think is a good conservative take with him tonight. Like there's just so much other stuff. My price isn't that cheap anymore. Like, do we like playing Teague with plan to drop to Derek White or prioritizing White? That's a good question. I think you would try to play Teague over White if they were both going to play. Those both 8 o'clock games? No, the Spurs are later.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you have the spot for Teague right now and have the drop to White in the event he doesn't play. I think that's just fine. You need Teague to be in and starting. But, yeah, I think that's a very good – you have a good plan, sir. Well done.
I have no interest in anything on the Brooklyn side of any value. They're too random of a team.
Yeah, nor should you, my friend. I will say, well, not Ed Davis. Jared Allen has apparently got a rumbly in his tumbly. So in the event Jared Allen doesn't play, now I have fairly strong interest in both Ed Davis and Rondé Hollis-Jefferson as tournament plays. Allen out just got yelled at me. Wow, that came in right on time.
Fair enough. Let's talk about that for a couple minutes since we're here.
Yeah. I'd like a lineup. And you do want whomever starts, but both of them now become pretty sexy tournament plays, depending on who starts. If Rondé starts, I'd probably prefer Ed Davis in tournaments. If Ed Davis starts, I would still prefer Rondé in tournaments. So I'm actually going to prefer whichever guy doesn't start in tournaments, oddly.
I assume they start Ed Davis.
I assume they start Ed Davis as well. Just expecting Rondé to go out there, and I know we've only given you 17 minutes, play 35 against Karl-Anthony Towns. Good luck. Here's your cyanide pill. Like that, I can see that going badly in a big hurry. So,
any Kenneth Faried takes?
Mirotic out as well. Yeah, don't play Kenneth Faried. There's my hot take. I don't know. I don't think he gets 20 minutes even with this. They will just run small and do various other things, I think. He's no longer precisely out of tournament consideration. If he is starting he's minimum price both sites. So, but he is easily the third of the plays I'm looking for on this team. Not knowing who starts right now, I like Rondé more at, I want to say 42 on DK and 44 on FanDuel or something. That gets pretty nice for me. Ed D, pretty exciting too. And I'm pretty sure Ed Davis has to get the start here. So both those guys are really strong, I guess. I don't know. It's really close as to which of those I'm going to prefer more. And Faried is now not a horrible tournament play. I would not do it. But I'm going to guess you now get 14 minutes of Kenneth Faried. That's not enough for me for consideration. I
think Julius Randle's about to be popular now.
Yeah, and it makes your Towns play a little better too. Like now he's just getting anything he wants. Like Jared Allen is a fairly big dude, decent defender, can get some blocks, can make things a little more difficult. Play both those Brooklyn guys on FanDuel. They're both power forwards, right? Am I correctly intuiting that situation? Ed Davis, power forward. Rondé, I know, is a power forward. They're both power forwards. Yeah, that would have required me to move off the current cheap power forwards I have in this dummy lineup of Markieff and Kelly O. But yeah, that's pretty exciting. Ed Davis is going to start. Kenny's, really stupid, but I don't think he's quite stupid enough to be like, go get him, Rondé. Like, it seems like a tough spot, or we'll switch Dudley over onto him. No way he can handle that. So, yeah.
All right, let's transition, I guess, to Oklahoma City and Phoenix. We'll try to be quick here now that we got all that news in. Didn't see that one coming at that time. OKC, Love Dennis Schroeder. Should be no surprises there.
Not surprised.
But Phoenix, I've got some Devin Booker. I've got some TJ Warren. I got some Isaiah Cannon. I oddly like a little bit of Phoenix today because I think their ownership is a little lower than it should be. Well, I mean, mostly because the Thunder are terrifying defensively.
Yeah.
Give me your thoughts on Paul George to start, because he is not a guy I'm getting right now. So I think that take would be interesting.
I think he's great in tournaments, especially on FanDuel, actually, just because of the whole steal block thing. Like, he can get very easily 6 steals in this matchup.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not certain that they randomly crush them here. It's like a 9-10 point line, I think. So I'm not, there's that concern as well. But Durant's going to be really popular. I don't know where George comes in relative to Kawhi, but then we're talking about we like those mid-price plays of, again, Harrison Barnes, who I'm sure is going to be 40-something% owned, and TJ Warren, who's going to be 40-something% owned. So I like Paul George in tournaments. I'm not at all surprised to see 65 next to Paul George's name at the end of the day on FanDuel, and for that reason, at that ownership, massive Durant ownership for more money. You're trying to free up some money. I don't have an issue with that pivot, especially if this is your FanDuel lineup you're building without a fairly chalky Dennis Schroeder.
Sure.
So that's, my quick take there. I don't think you need to force in Paul George if you don't have any. I'm just guessing because of those other guys and the Kawhi and the Durant and the mid-price guys who I expect to be fairly chalky, that the ownership is really nice for what's a pretty stellar matchup. And just a guy who always carries a huge upside. On DK, he can make 7 threes. On FanDuel, he can get 6 steals and 2 blocks and, 28 and 11. So, especially if I'm not playing Schroeder, the German chocolate cake, as he refers to himself, Paul George does make some more sense there. If there's a day you want to play the shooting guards, I guess this is it. I'll rank them Ferguson, Abrinas, Hamidou Diallo. I wouldn't, but feel free to knock yourself out. Huge spot for Steven Adams, even on FanDuel where he's like 8K. I'll put it this way. These two teams played once this year, and you may recall I was talking about a little guy before lock at $3,400. His name was Nerlens Noel, and that worked. And while Nerlens Noel is a very good and fantasy productive basketball player, he's not Wilt Chamberlain, and he put up 55 in 27 minutes or something.
Ridiculous game.
So yeah, there's a ceiling there for Steven Adams. He's not going to pick up a couple of those steals that Nerlens got maybe, but he'll get all those rebounds. He'll get all those points. He'll get all those blocks. So yeah, Steven Adams, I think, will go under-owned for how good he is a couple places. On DK, there's just so many amazing centers. On FanDuel, 7,900. That feels a little dirty. So yeah, little Adam makes a lot of sense for me. Moving across the ball. Cannon is again sort of a cash punt for me at 4,200. Didn't mind him last game. He had like 20. Again, I had him behind Cook, who was the same price. I was like, play Cook in anything. Play Cannon if you want sort of a backup at that price. And then there was, I think Fultz was the third guy in that range or something. Booker's just too cheap. This game stays close. I like him even more if you are playing George, for example. But like 7,500 on FanDuel, that's way too good. 79 on DK, a lot easier to get off of. Ariza is a fine tournament pivot to TJ Warren, has 35-point upside. He's hit 3 out of his last 6 games. He's under 5K on both sides. If you're not playing TJ Warren and need to save a little money off other guy, Trevor Ariza is just fine for me. TJ Warren is just underpriced. He should be $1,000 more on both sides. DeAndre Ayton has a shit matchup, but it's cheap and there's enough raw talent there, and I don't think the ownership is significant because I think it's fairly obvious that it's a shit matchup that you could throw him in a tournament. I'm done. Let's move.
Got it. 2 games remaining. Sacramento Kings, San Antonio Spurs. Ooh, we got that one in just before the alarm was going off. We'll start it up here.
My wife says I'm known for being satisfying but not taking very long.
Sounds like we're having a very similar life.
I'm sorry to hear
that. DeMar DeRozan is my key here.
Basketball. I'm in there going, all right, starting lineup. Sacramento Kings.
Yep.
De'Aaron Fox. Monshon.
And then it's over.
Yeah. Damn it. That's exactly how that goes.
I have a lot of DeMar DeRozan today.
Talk to me. EMAC would be happy.
Yeah, 9,100 on FanDuel.
You know EMAC shooting guards against the Kings? It's a bit of a thing.
So. Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. He had a thing where he and I hosted some 500 shows together over 2 years. And every single time the Kings were playing, whoever the opposing shooting guard was, EMAC would love them and give me a stat that at the time, the Kings had given up more fantasy points to shooting guards over the last 3 years than anyone. So I heard him say that approximately 300 or 400 times over 2 years. So whenever anyone says, I have a lot of DeRozan, I'm like, oh, obviously, EMAC. So.
I do have a lot of DeRozan. I think $9,100 is simply too cheap. I think that he is, in my opinion, pretty clearly the best shooting guard option on the slate. And in those cases, like, I just want to have more of that. He's only 11% owned. I'm not worried about Sacramento in any sort of real way. So give me some DeMar. Who's going to hold him in check? Nobody.
Nobody. They need Garrett Temple, and he's busy. Seriously, Garrett Temple was good against DeMar and generally defensively. Yeah, I think on FanDuel, where you're looking, ideal tournament pivot off $400 more Zach LaVine. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. You're spending $500 more than Drew Holiday. I would rather play Drew than DeMar and Cash. I feel pretty good about saying that. But yeah, DeMar DeRozan has a massive, massive upside. We're in Sacramento. We like the upside more there. The game staying close, that is. Gay coming back takes a little bit of shine off for me there. Like, I would rather Gay stayed out if I was making that play, but I think that's a fine place to stick your flag. Unlikely it's going to burn you. I think it's pretty likely, if he doesn't get 40, I'll be pretty surprised. 50 wouldn't surprise me at all, and maybe you hit, his fourth or fifth 60 of the year. So, yeah, I'm fine with that. I generally think I would rather play him than LaMarcus Aldridge tonight with positionality and other things. I think just raw points per dollar, I prefer Dennis Schroeder and Devin Booker on FanDuel. I will say that.
They are both guys I have quite a bit of, so
right. Yeah,
I mean,
you're saving 1,900 with Schroeder and 16 with Booker. I slightly prefer them for that reason, and they are both guys who carry upsides of 50 plus, Booker 80 plus. So, but yeah, I'm fine with that. What else from this game you get?
A little bit of Rudy Gay on his way back. Nothing crazy, just matching the field. And then I'm gonna have some B Jelly on the Sacramento side, and a little bit of Marvin Bagley. Hopefully he can grab a couple extra minutes today with Costa Kufos out.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I like, mostly, again, at the DK price where he's way too cheap, Willie Cauley-Stein. He's actually been good against the Spurs, good against Aldridge, looked fine, went back and actually looked at some tape because it's normally the kind of center that Aldridge does a little better at dealing with, but he just maneuvers him very well in and around the paint, does the box very well. So 6,200 Willie Cauley-Stein makes a lot of sense for me on DK. And I think the ownership is low relative to Wendell Carter Jr. and Steven Adams and all these other guys we're talking about at center. And I like Bagley a lot. He's like power forward only 4,400 on DK. The most interesting part of that is after their last game, which was Saturday, Jaeger spoke extensively on a number of topics. It's actually, if you like the Kings, like I do, if you're a sadist like that, it's a good presser to watch. But he speaks for a minute there about how he wants to start giving Bagley more time at the 5. So I was like, oh, okay. And then Costa Kufos is out today. I'm like, oh, I can see all kinds of ways this gets sexy. So, yeah, if I'm building one DK lineup, I have either Bagley or Willie Cauley-Stein in it. I heard the noise that haunts my dreams. Let me see if there's anyone else here that I think deserves a specific mention. I'm fine with Fox, basically DK only. I'm fine with Heald, basically DK only. Yeah. Fox is even sort of fine in cash for me. They're just willing to run him 42 minutes. Like there's been multiple game logs where you take a look at him and it's De'Aaron Fox, 41 minutes, no one else more than 28. You're like, wow, they're really committed to that guy. And you can obviously play Aldridge. His price is still a little better than it should be. And again, Derek White, I probably prefer Teague if he is starting, as we discussed. FanDuel, no thank you. But DK is $2,000 to the dollar cheaper, I think. Fair amount of interest at 4,300. Their last game was a bit more of a ceiling, but I would project him in the spot for, again, somewhat nervously because we're only a couple games back from injury. But, 31 minutes, 27 fantasy points. That's pretty good for $4,300. So fair amount of interest in D White there. And yeah, let's move on.
Let's do it. Final game.
Really? Go us.
Los Angeles Clippers, Golden State Warriors.
Not a quick one.
Some of it is actually. I don't have anyone on FanDuel more than 10% owned. Clippers are set up significantly better on DK than they are on FanDuel. Only guy that I have of any volume on the Clippers would be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And then from the Warriors side, I like Durant. I don't have nearly as much as I would have liked. I have a little bit of Quinn Cook. I'm not really happy about it. I just don't have much of this game, and I think that's going to be a major mistake.
it feels dicey. Like the Clips are home technically, although especially there we can expect the Dubs to travel fairly well. We have 11 minutes left. I want to do 10 minutes of questions, so let me give the quick take here. Sure. Quinn Cook, I've gone off from being almost all in on last slate to probably wanting very little of here, for a few reasons. One, Ownership, now it's going to be lower than it was last time because of the increased price, the size of the slate, etc. But still significant, I imagine. Like 25%?
We have it. I think we have it way lower than that, actually.
Oh, interesting.
We have him 16.
Okay. Yeah, that would be like the low and the high of it, I would think. He shot out of his mind. And this matchup is a far tougher one, and he's spending a lot more time with Pat Beverly up on his face, and Shea, who's a perfectly capable defender, up in his face, and potentially Avery Bradley, who I don't think plays actually, but possibly suits up, and is just much more trouble there. And Draymond is back, and Sean Livingston is back. Yeah. So the combination of those guys, now you're looking at less usage, less ball handling, less distribution. And the price is up $1,000. Like, for all these reasons, that's enough for me to look other places. Like, I have no issue if you play him. He's still priced fine. I'm not at all surprised if he runs out and gets 30 again today. But, he's 5,000, 5,400 on a juicy slate where a lot of guys are going to crush their value. I want my 5,000, 5,500 guys to give me 40. I don't think that's going to happen. It's obviously not impossible, but a tough spot for it. And again, there's 5 or 6 negative factors if I was grading him versus his last performance. So disinclined towards Quinn Cook for those reasons. You can play Clay. You can always play Clay. He's better with Steph out, although a little bit more frenetic as far as delta upside, downside. Durant's still my top overall scorer on the day. This is a team we like to attack at the forwards a little more than we like to attack at the guards, and Gallinari or Tobias Harris, like, those aren't going to work out. So hard not to think Durant gets you. What did he get? 59 last game? That's a little higher than I would project, but only by a couple points. So KD, very safe, very expensive now. I mean, he's 11-3 on FanDuel or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's quite the price tag.
Yeah, there's a nut there. So Shelvin Mack, Brooks is out, maybe a few more minutes. I'd have to look at his exact price. I would think he'd be fine in tournaments off the top of my head.
I'm playing some Shelvin Mack if that helps.
Yeah, that's. I mean, if you're looking for that game, just the pace and everything. But yeah, I mean, if you have 100 lineups and you have 3 Shelvin Macks, I'm like, okay, fine. That does not seem wildly disproportionate. Draymond Green's playable in tournaments. FanDuel less expensive than DK, 79 versus 8 flat, I think. Steals and blocks, man, and you're going to get him at 2% owned because of coming in late and returning from injury. And it's the same theory as Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis can completely end the slate. He's not matchup dependent. Anthony Davis can give you 90 tonight. Absolutely. I'm not even surprised to see it. He's just got all that in the tank. So I have no issue spent. Now you're going to be disappointed because of all the other amazing plays for $4,000 cheaper most of the time. But when he hits, you're going to hit hard. So if you hit your other spots, you're looking at, one of those 1,000 to 1 ROI nights. So same thing with Draymond. Probably not going to be that exceptional, but definitely all the upside in the world there. Like Damian Jones the last couple games, off him now with Draymond Green back. Also really off the other bigs. If you wanted to play one, it's probably still Bell for me over Looney. But done talking about that team. As far as the Clips go, still like Pat Beverly on DK at 4,100. You want Bradley out. Bradley out means you're probably getting 37 minutes instead of 31 minutes or something. That's pretty exciting for me. Bradley, if he's in and starting, if you find out in time and can swap into him in the mid 3s, I'm fine with that. Gallo and Toby are too cheap on DK. Tough matchups for both, but perfectly fine in tournaments. I don't want to play Gortat. If I'm going to play one of the centers, I'll play Montrezl Harrell Zezel. Generally has had trouble against the Warriors, not his best matchup. But the upside is there, and who the hell else are they going to play at center here? I don't think Gortat's going to get more than 18, 20 minutes. So downside 20. They're not going to play Boban, I don't think. And I like Shea there, 4,200 on DK, 5,000 on FanDuel is a little more than I expect to spend, and I'd really like to see Bradley out before I do that, but it feels fairly safe, and obviously some pace here. And Lou Williams, again, prices come up over 6 everywhere. Would like to know that Bradley is out. But certainly fine to play in tournaments, and I think I'm done. I think we're there.
Let's do it. Let's get some questions.
Cool.
KD and Teague or Kawhi and Randall, DK?
Everything is going to be not Teague until I know he's playing. If we know he's in, it's going to be KD and Teague for me.
Okay. Barnes or Warren for GPP?
Warren. I expect to be a little lower owned, and there's a little more upside, and he's a little more expensive everywhere. So probably Warren for me. Close. It depends on the rest of your lineup. If you have anyone on Chicago, it probably becomes Barnes for me. So that's going to be very lineup dependent.
Everybody hit that like button.
Yeah, everyone hit the like button. So people are asking, can you play Ed Davis and Rondé Hollis-Jefferson together? Yes, you can. They are inexpensive enough that you ignore stuff like that. Like they just don't cost nearly enough where that becomes a concern.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. When guys are like 4,500 and 5K, you're not really worried about playing them together. It's when you're playing like, oh, should I play Simmons and Embiid together? It's like, probably not. And
even they're not going for a lot of the same stats. No. They're both going for rebounds, and they're both taking shots, obviously. But if someone's like, can I play Gallinari and Harris? Okay, now you're talking about two wing forwards who are both trying to make their three-pointers and get to their 10th rebound, and like there's a lot of overlap there, and they're
that's a good example.
13 to 15,000, as opposed to Ed Davis and Rondé Hollis-Jefferson are collectively 7,800. So you just don't care, because there's any number of worlds in which Ed Davis gets 30 and Rondé Hollis-Jefferson gets 35, and very nearly impossible that there's worlds where both Harris and Gallinari get 45, which is what you're hoping for at their prices.
All right, rank them. Towns, Adams, DeAndre Jordan. I have no context for you other than what I just said.
I can't answer that question because it's different by site and it's different cash and tournaments. I like all three of those players. Towns will be the highest owned of them. I guess I'm answering the question after starting by saying I can't answer the question. But Towns will be the highest owned of them, I presume. I'm fine with playing any of those players in any format. Probably slightly prefer Adams to DeAndre at his prices. But can't go wrong. I'm fine with all three of those dudes.
Adams is the guy. I don't have any Adams. I don't have a problem with it, but it's not for me.
Okay. I certainly have no argument to that. Like,
yeah, okay. I have a lot of DeAndre Jordan, and he's $300 cheaper, so it's just one of those. Let's see what we've got. Thoughts on Randall now? I guess we didn't really totally touch on it. I mean, I love him tonight now. I'm going to have a decent amount of him. What do you think?
Did we get Mirotic out and I missed it? Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's starting next to Braugen. Yeah, 62 or whatever the hell. Now especially with that news coming out, I think 3 minutes ago, and we're 5 minutes before lock. That's perfectly exciting for me. If you have the money, I think it's a fine pivot off Willie Cauley-Stein, although it's going to reduce his ownership. So I still like Willie a bit, but I have no issue with you playing Randall in just about anything. So,
do you see any questions? Can you take any questions right now? I'm going to do a recrunch.
Sure, I will talk. Do your thing.
Thank you.
Let's make you a couple dollars. Let me find this and pull the chat up. Looking at the premium chat, I'm going to rocket speed through these. So just drop them in there, and I will answer as quickly as I can as soon as I scroll down to the 6,000 chats missed. Okay, no problem. Best 4,200, Mac, Barea, Cannon, or Arcidiacono. Cash for me there is barely Cannon over Arcidiacono. Tournament there for me is Barea. Is DeAndre Jordan or Randall in cash on FanDuel? I would actually play DeAndre Jordan in cash. I think that's a little bit safer. Any Brogdon at 4K? Oh, Bogdan at 4K. Yes, I think he makes a reasonable amount of sense on FanDuel. You want to be able to drop it. He's back in there. Takes away a little bit of your projection for a couple other guys. Saw whatever it was, 18, 20 minutes, first two games. I think that could happen again. I'm a big fan of his game. And I like the spot and possibly in a blowout. So sure, I think FanDuel only for me because I want to be able to drop that. But I like Bogdan at 2%. Which stud are you building around in cash on FanDuel? Durant, I guess, is my closest answer to that question. I'm trying to think of, anyone else who's a big fan of playing Durant. Yes, I guess that's the stud I'm building around if I have to build around a stud. Rank Cat Adams and Jordan. We did that. Thoughts on Randall now. Ed Davis and Harry Barnes or RHJ and Teague, assuming Teague is starting. I would rather play RHJ and Teague in tournaments. Ed D and Harry Barnes would still be better in cash for me. Answered. Which stud would you be building around? We answered that. Barea or Anderson DK cash is still going to be Barea for me.
Yeah. I'm back now, by the way.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I got him in pretty good. 2 minutes. That's pretty good from crunch to upload.
Yeah, well done. Go ahead and take a look at news. I'm gonna scan my tweet deck constantly for news breaking as we hit this. But
Jared Allen out. We know that. Heat lineup: Dragic, Richardson, Magruder, Winslow, Whiteside. Pelicans starting: Holiday, Moore, Johnson, Randall, Davis. Nothing crazy there.
I'm just scanning my Twitter alerts, try to get some 7:59 news. Let me know if anything on the restream chats, the premium was clear.
Yeah. Premium looks good. AD or Durant? Gotta give me a sight on that one.
Durant and cash, AD in tournaments.
Yeah,
pretty much. I mean, or Durant in tournaments. And the Durant, I literally project for a little bit more than AD, which feels weird. But
don't worry, Chad. I got it in by a mile. No real questions right now.
All right. I think that was a good show. We covered everything. I really think the pace was good.
Warren, or last question, Warren or Winslow, DK, GPP?
I'm fine with using Winslow. I do project Warren for a little bit more, but Winslow is in a good spot. He's produced here before, and the ownership is going to be a fraction of, like a quarter of. So Winslow, if I have to play one, I think is where I'm inclined, and I think Josh would agree with me.
I have them separated by 0.3 of a point in my projections on DraftKings. Yeah,
they're
literally next to each other.
Do you have them both at like 28.5?
Winslow at 26.7, Warren at 27 flat.
Okay, yeah, I was tinkering earlier today. I had Warren at like 29 and Winslow at like 26. So we have a little bit of a difference there, but again, that's still within the margin of error easily. So yeah,
and we're locked. We are locked. How many games do we have locking at 7:00?
1 or 2?
Just one. So
it's just
not
one.
going to be a very fun game for you. But
no,
feel free to check out Wizards and Magic ownership.
Yeah, okay. I mean, John Wall ownership on DK is going to be very interesting. So
it will indeed. We had him projected for 20.
Interesting. I'm going to take the over. That's an interesting game, by the way. As I can challenge that would be fun for me to see whether or not I can just outbrain our excellent ownership projections. Just like give me all the guys. That's what we should do with Daddy Like.
Actually, I don't know if it is still 20. We got an update at 6:47 that I have not seen, so I'm going to update those in my sheet.
Okay, I will take the over on that one if it's 20 on the nose. I won't. All right, I'm going to hit the download. I won't open it yet.
21 is the number officially.
Getting closer. I'm going to take over, I think, but that's. I don't think it gets to 25. But here we go. Downloading, opening.
Which tournament are you checking?
The largest one is what I always do. So today it was the 425K Big Jam. So I don't know if that affects.
No, that should be fine.
John Wall, 22.02%. I claim victory and exit the field.
Shout out Asimo.
Yeah, those ownership projections are so good. And again, I say I get shit for not doing enough whoring. I'm very bad at that. But every time I look at these things, they're so good. Like I can't tell you how useful that information is. What ownership will John Wall be? Getting it within 1% is fabulous. Yeah, what did it have for Brad Beal?
I want to say the same or something slightly higher than that. 28?
23.45, so slightly higher, guy. After that, we fall off a cliff. Dwight Howard.
I have a quick question for you. Just curious on your thoughts. So what would you consider to be a good margin of error on ownership projections? Like obviously the higher the number, it's going to have a little bit bigger of error bars. But
it's weird because the higher it's going to have larger numerical error, but the lower it's going to have larger percentage error.
Right.
Trying to predict the difference between when and again, I didn't know this question was coming, but when I off the top of my head project a guy who's in the 40-50 range, I'm generally within about 20%. When I'm trying to project a guy in the single digits, I'll frequently say 6 and get 3. Like I'll miss by 100%. So, and it also depends so much on how many games there are and how many are at lock. So it's really, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of variables. It's very tough to put a, it's almost like
let's use Wall for an example. We had him at 21. Like, what would you consider an appropriate range for that right now? I've never really thought about it until right now, and I felt like it would be a good time to talk about it.
Oh, it's a good chat. What you're saying? What do I think would be a good job of a projection system to come out with his number?
Yeah,
I would. I mean, obviously, within 1% is pretty brilliant.
Sure.
Anything within about 5% is still actionable. Again, it's the weird thing is ownership percentages should almost be inverse ownership percentages because the relevant number is 78%, which is the amount of the field you leap when you beat him.
Yeah,
which is why the projection difference of 3 to 7% doesn't matter that much.
No,
and I talk about that with people, and they're like, "You said that guy was 5%, he was 9%." I'm like, okay, does that really change your play whether or not you're fading 95% of the field or 91% of the field? Does that you obviously want to be as accurate as possible, but that's pretty stellar. So it ends up being it's weird. What you're looking for is almost the correlative inverse there, but I don't know. I mean, I would defer because by merit of not being allowed to play for a few years now, and previous to that being before the age of Cruncher, don't have much experience with looking at ownership projections, except for this one I've looked at about, I want to say three different utilities on 3 different sites, and generally looked at them and went, yeah, I can do better than that. Like, usually I looked at them and disregarded them immediately. I was like, oh, they don't react to late news, and they're simply not accurate enough. And I think off the top of my head, I am more accurate than these projections are. And I don't feel that way looking at ours. So I think these are the best I've ever seen. But it'd be really difficult without having taken, a modern sample of others. Because again, it's purely relative.
Right.
Like, I don't know how to say what is a reasonable variance to be wrong. Because if ours are wrong by an average delta of 11% of the actual ownership, and that's the best in the industry, then that's okay.
Sure.
Regardless as to what I say, if I say, no, it should be under 7% of delta, well, that's sort of arbitrary. And so it's a tough question for me to answer because it's going to vary day to day. But yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I would defer generally to Lofty and Adam and yourself and the other people who have much more experience with such utilities.
Yeah, I would have said, like, if we had Wall at 20, anywhere in like the 16 to 24 range, I'd be pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I think that's still exceptional because that isn't going to change how you're going to play him. There's a point at which it's not even useful.
Yeah.
Like moving from being off by an average of 7% to being off by an average of 0% would be almost relevant.
Yeah.
Like if you moved from if you literally somehow got it perfect. We went, here are the actual ownerships as opposed to being off by an average of 7%. Wouldn't change much. Like, Harrison Barnes will be 41.2%. Knowing exactly 41.2 as opposed to having a range of 37.4 to 45 doesn't really affect anything at that point. I don't think we have the tools or the intuition to actually make use of that more perfect data. So this is, you could make an argument we're approaching as good as is useful.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's really, it is incredibly valuable. I speak to, the people who win all the time, and as great as you are and as great as I like to think I am, a lot of them are just like, yeah, the ownership destroys it. And it makes a lot of sense. Basketball is hard to beat because of how statistically predictable it is. And your number one way of doing it is going to be to know the ownership and zig when they zig.
For sure. What else we got ownership-wise for this game? Where'd Dwight Howard end up?
7%, number 3 on the list. So
wow.
We get 23, 22, Dwight 7.
7% for
and then
Dwight.
It gets halved again. 3.4 for Vooch. Terrence Ross at 2.7, Keefe at 2.4, Fournier at 2.2, Otto Porter at Sidney Poitier, Otto Porter 2 flat, Jeff Green 1.7. I did not expect 1.7. Jeff Green. Go ahead and write down and say Daddy doesn't like. There you go. Had to get one in there. Mo Bamba 1.4, Aaron Gordon 1.3. Yes.
That's nuts.
Yes. 1.3% Aaron Gordon. Just more than Jarrell Martin 0.9, which isn't technically using my standard criteria playing yourself, but probably is the very best playing with yourself. John Simmons 1%, DJ Augustine 0.8, Oubre 0.8, Jerian Grant 0.7. He's played better. Actually, that's not as dreadful as all these surrounding it. Austin Rivers 0.4, Wes Iwundu 0.3. I guess he's going to play 30 minutes. At some point, he has to do something with 30 minutes. Jason Smith 0.2, Kem Birch 0.1, Jan Mahinmi 0.1, Satoransky 0.01, Briscoe double odds, Thomas Bryant double odds, Troy Brown double odds, Emil Jefferson double odds. Nobody played themselves because there is nobody actually out for no one played Jonathan Isaac. Sorry. I'm trying to think guys you could actually have played who were not present. No one owned Jonathan Isaac, which would have been a congratulations, you played yourself. So I leave, again, so often like my wife, unfulfilled.
I bet that Pelicans news is what affected Dwight Howard's ownership so much. And I bet that the people that are going to get Dwight Howard at 4% ownership are going to be quite happy.
Yeah, 7% Dwight. I mean, he's just at the solid 7er there. That's
we probably reappropriated a lot of Dwight Howard's ownership directly to Julius Randle. $500 separating the two. So
don't hate it. I mean, it depends where we think Randall comes in now. Like Randall up to about 15, I'd be like, okay, Randall or Dwight. I'd be fine either way there.
Yeah.
If you get like 21% Randall now, Again, now that is the 7:30 game. Am I getting that right? Let me see if I'm.
You are correct.
Yeah. So at that point, I can see. That's the 7:30. Oh, there's two 7:30s. There's like two 7:30s and 4 8s. So the nice thing is we're gonna have a big idea what's going well here. 7 of the games are done by about 10:30. Maybe I'll do an early scope or something because that'll be nice. But yeah, no,
good show.
It'll be interesting we could sit here 22 more minutes and see how Randall's on. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, they're not gonna happen today.
Yeah, I smoked during the show, so for me, it's no difference.
I just want to go relax. Today was a long day. I'm not going to lie. Woke up a little hungover. Went to a wedding yesterday, and it was a bit of an event.
Well, I'd hate to see the groom.
He was looking pretty rugged when we left the bar.
Rugged or ragged? He had a nice stubbly beard, or
let's go both. Let's go both.
Nice.
He was having. He had himself quite a night.
You only saw the first half.
Yeah.
I don't know about your wedding night. I tell you, wedding night is supposed to be roses on the bedspread and, like 5 hours of boning. And I think that doesn't happen nearly as much as people think. Because you're like me, you're old and you've been dancing and your knees are killing you and you've had 17 things of champagne and then, whatever substance may have been spread and lined up on the table and 17 other things. And is like, now have the best sex of your life. And you're like, don't I have like 30 years to have the best sex of my life now? Can I,
We got to the hotel at 2:00 in the morning. We ordered Domino's. She and I split some Parmesan.
Already better than my wedding.
Parmesan dough bites and a pepperoni pizza and passed out. That is a true story.
Yeah, that's the other thing is cute, but
we stuffed our face with Domino's because we were drunk and then we went to sleep.
I did better than that. The deed was like I had to look at myself in the morning, so shit had to get done, but. I got a bonus. Our reception was at the hotel. So literally I had 75 feet from room to suite. Or from ballroom to suite. So, that certainly if I had to pile in a car and grab a bag of gifts and some envelopes
that's exactly how that shook out.
Yeah. So I'm giving you some slack. You're still, an affront to my masculinity, but I'm giving you some slack.
Yeah. Look, we lived together for like 5 years before that. It's just,
I got you beat there, my friend.
Yeah. It was not that interesting.
We lived together for well over a decade before we tied the knot. I think it's important when you make a decision like that. It's important to make sure this is the woman you really like. So it's important that you've observed her for about a decade of motherhood first.
Sure.
I think it's a good rule of thumb for getting married. Never marry someone with whom you haven't cohabitated and had a child who has reached double-digit years. That way,
there you go.
Really, it's not a decision to take lightly.
There you go. I think we're good. Good show. Good
yes,
stuff.
I
1,300 people in here today.
1,300
on the nose.
Should get to 15 soon. I don't know if we can. My first year at Roto Grinders, big friends of mine. I started actually into the season, which I would have thought hurt it. But I started with EMAC, and I want to say about this time, and managed to like double the ownership from the middle of the double the viewership from the middle of November to like the middle of December. So we're gonna try to keep climbing that one up there. You put out a good product and charge a competitive price, such as free, you tend to get some people showing up.
Certainly do.
Let's go for 2,000 by Christmas.
That's the plan. Best of luck, everybody. Live Before Lock is the promo code. 7-day free trial on any package you would like. Thanks for tuning in. We are out of here. Goodbye.